welcome to a new episode of Tell Muses Season 2. This is a podcast run by storytellers, with storytellers, for storytellers, and for anyone interested in the art of the oral word. Season 2 of this podcast is under the wing of Gawi, aka Get a Word in Edgeways, which is a lovely little festival that takes place every October when it is the best time to visit England in the very beautiful, very picturesque village of March Wenlock. I'm supposed to call it a town, but it's not. It's really a medieval or pre-medieval village. And other than having wonderful scenery, it's also got wonderful artists. So it is highly recommended that people should visit at least once, give it a chance. Today, Simona from Italy and myself from Greece have with us a very nice lady from the UK who is currently in Manchester, England, called Iris Skipworth. Hello and welcome, Iris.
Hi, Despina. Hi, Simona. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming.
So you will be our closing muse for this season of the podcast, Iris. They call our podcast Tell Muses, and you will be our muse today, you see. So,
I've never
Iris,
considered myself a muse before.
there
Thank you
you
for
go.
inviting me.
It's just the first time out of many to come, I'm sure. So, for the people who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about who Iris Skipworth is?
I am a 27-year-old storyteller, and I've been telling stories pretty much all my life because I was fortunate enough to grow up with storytelling. There's many storytelling festivals in the UK that my parents were taking me to, my mum especially, from being very young. And so I've always known storytelling. I just enjoyed it so much. And I was fortunate enough to have that encouraged and get taken to young storyteller competitions and to local clubs on a monthly basis and this. So I've been telling stories properly. Who knows when do you officially become a storyteller? When that is what you are brought up with. You know, have I been telling stories since I was 7 and I first got on a stage at Beyond the Border Festival? Have I been telling stories from when I first got paid? And whether that was winning a competition, the National Young Storyteller, or whether that was being booked for a first gig. But all of these things incrementally happening until I can now safely say I am a storyteller. I run a storytelling club in Manchester called A Sting in the Tail, which we founded back in 2019. But as everyone might remember, there was a global plague in the middle. So it had a few years off from 2019 till now, but it's now been running for nearly 2 years continuously in its location every month. And I get to invite storytellers down to Manchester. And apart from that, I have been a student up until a week and a half ago when I handed in my final deadline. So I'm now looking at my summer with some storytelling festivals and everything. And then, getting to train under Shona Lee is what's coming next. So I'm looking forward to making my life out of stories. That's me.
What is the thing that you like the most about storytelling? What hooked you into storytelling?
I mean, it's the same reason that different people who've had different upbringings say, oh, I watch films, or, oh, well, I love reading a book, or, you know, if it's been an escape or if it's been something to inspire their imagination. For me, I just had storytelling to begin with. And so it seems a natural grouping with all of those. Oh, I go to the theatre, oh, I go read books. Oh, I go to storytelling events, I go and listen to stories. It was never something that I was expected to grow out of because all the adults in my life love storytelling too. So I didn't have anything to contend with there about rediscovering storytelling or finding out it wasn't something I was meant to leave behind. So what I love about storytelling is all the adventures, is all the characters, is all the moral lessons for growth, is all the laughs, is all the old shaggy dog stories and old wives' tales. And storytelling takes so many different forms. Depending on what you want from it, I love when it makes me cry. I love when it makes me laugh. I love when I get to take anything away from a story.
I think getting entertained or becoming emotional and let your feelings flow through a story, which is always a very nice thing, of course. When it happens to you and when through your story it happens to other people, it's awesome. But other than that, we've had so many people in this podcast, Iris, and we've had so many different takes. It is incredible that there are so many different ways to use it and get through to people, like really touch them. So yeah, we understand how important that can be for a storyteller. But I have another question for you. Going back to the past, I like to put my ducks in a row, past, present, future. So I'll take it that way because this is how my brain works. You said you were brought up in a storytelling environment and you were taken to storytelling events since a very young age. Did your parents also tell stories?
Neither of my parents told stories in the way of being a storyteller. No, we went to storytelling events as punters, as ticket holders, as something because it was an art form that they wanted to listen to. But my parents told me bedtime stories. My mum was a bookseller and she sold stories, but my dad later, he's a printer, and he started printing out of copyright storybooks. And then he'd then also have his bookstall next to my mum's bookstall. And I was brought up with being told and reading and going to storytelling. But no, my mum went to the first festival as a worker. She was just on a food van. And so she'd got a summer job, and the food van went to loads of different festivals. And one of the festivals was Beyond the Border down at St. Donat's Castle. And so she got to go there. She got some time off. She got to go, what on earth is happening here? Who are these people? Why are they gathered? I've been to so many new places this summer. What's going on here? So she discovered, oh, apparently it's a storytelling festival. Apparently that's something we do in this country. And so she got to listen and just went, oh, I'm coming back. I enjoy this one. And so she went back to the festival, and then my dad went, and then this was a few years before I was born. And so I'm very fortunate that happenstance came along at the right time to help her discover Beyond the Border. And then she went, okay, where else? And there was a storytelling club in Manchester at the time on the Eighth Day Cafe on Oxford Road. And so she went there, and she went there with my dad. And then they went to that storytelling festival. They found Fate Festival at the Edge, of course, at Much Wenlock at the time, and went there. And then my mum was selling books. And so we just found ways to keep going.
But they never turned into storytellers themselves, did they? You're the only storyteller in your family, apparently, right?
No, because my dad will be very offended if he hears that. No.
Pardon, Dad.
No. So if they start going to storytelling festivals before I'm born, they're listening to stories. You hear this. Not everyone who reads a book becomes an author. Not everyone who goes to the theatre comes outside going, what an amazing show. They don't then go and get on the stage themselves, It's not because they don't enjoy it, but storytelling is one of those art forms where, as I said, it was like, well, when did I become a storyteller? Is it when I first told a story on a stage? Is it when I got paid? Is it when someone invited me and now other people say, oh, you are a storyteller? Or is it when I first thought I was a storyteller? Did my parents become storytellers because they went to storytelling and then they're telling me stories? Or they're going to the storytelling club in Manchester and you're invited at you tell stories in a circle. Everyone shares a story. If you're telling a story every month, are you a storyteller? But you're not getting on a stage at a festival and being paid. So I'd say both my parents were storytellers. They were telling stories every month. They were telling stories to me. They were, no, they're storytellers, but they were never household names or festival field names. But then within 10 years, I've grown up with it. And then there were events to encourage young children, to encourage confidence and to encourage the kids to enjoy enough and everything. So if I start doing that, I start getting known by people as, oh, she's a storyteller. But again, I mean, any adults, when they're saying that, they're doing it to encourage you. When you're 7, you're not a festival field performer name, are you? And you're not that even at 17. There's not people going, oh, I'm going to do that, but people will say you are a storyteller.
Encouragement always comes nice at any age, really. Do you remember which was the very first story you told on stage to live audience?
I do, yeah. Not like so on purpose that I went, oh, this is going to be a life-changing event, I better remember. But I just remember because even from telling, you then tell the story. And so that memory has been retold. I told a story that I'd heard Daniel Morden tell about a day before in the kids' tent. And it was a story that he's also written as a children's book called So Hungry. And so he had been, I think, in the children's tent, though I don't now remember him telling me the story, but I know that I had only just heard it. And I knew that I had a copy of it, so I could also check in between hearing him tell, finding out there was a time for me to tell, figuring out, if I told a story, what would I tell? Oh, I like that story I heard yesterday. Oh, and I have a book of it, so I can quickly check that I've got everything in the right order. And so it's a story. It is a story that there is a child who is very, very hungry when they go to sleep. And so while they are asleep, they have a dream, but you don't realize it is a dream, of course. So they go to their room and then they go on an adventure, and they are in a land full of food. And there are broccoli trees, and there are cotton candy clouds, and there are all of these things. And as the child wanders around, they go, oh, I'll eat this. Oh, I'll eat this. And you are imagining what the world might be made out of. And there's loads of little details that I add in that differ each time. And then they wake up and they are eating their pillow. And it is this. That is the story.
To be honest, when you first mentioned the name of Daniel Morden, I knew that something dark was coming, be it a storytelling for kids or not. You just, oh, perhaps it's a stereotype I have developed on my own. Anyway, but I was sure that there would be something weird.
I have told since then many Daniel Morden stories. I think it is his way of telling that I so enjoyed. Whenever you've heard a story live, that's the story that I can already see how I'll tell. Later, I can tell a story from a book if I get the story and then bring it to life. When I was little, I was only ever going to be able to tell stories I'd heard brought to life. And when you say dark, the next book I had from Daniel was, of course, his Dark Tales from the Woods.
There you go.
And lots of those with taking out your own eyes and using them to pay for food and all of these.
Simona, don't get the wrong idea. He's not always horrible like that, but there's this kind of pattern that comes back time and again in his stories. Have you ever had the pleasure of enjoying one of Daniel's storytelling?
Never,
He's
no.
awesome. If you're given the chance, don't miss him. So I wanted to tell you, Iris, that last year at the East Anglian, I had the pleasure of emceeing for Daniel and Hugh Lupton. I had all those ancient Greek myths that had been switched somehow by Roman writers. Simona knows what I'm talking about. On the same night, or was it the next one? Anyway, within that weekend, that festival weekend, Daniel on his own did this dark stories theme, which some of my friends did not attend because they knew they were not going to sleep afterwards. Right? So the next day, I got his book, some of their books, Hugh's and Daniel's, being sold at the front part of the Food Museum. And I got one by Daniel. I started reading. It was Dark Tales. And I could hear his voice in my mind while I was reading the story, right? He's that impactful, I mean. Right. So a shout out for Daniel Morden. Way to go.
Yes.
In our next season, we should ask Daniel if he'd like to be our muse.
Definitely, but if you both looked rather scared of such dark stories, so remember what he might tell.
Oh, no, not I can handle stories. It's films I cannot handle, but stories, yeah. I think my mind has the ability to process them.
I mean, this is why the Dark Tales from the Woods or anything, this book was for like 8 and up, you know, take out your eyes, do
Yeah.
it works in a story, and it appeals as well to a child. You go, yes, yes, see what they do next.
I think it's wonderful to hear you speak about your childhood and all of this. Even because I'm a young storyteller myself, I'm a couple of years older than you are, but every time that I talk about storytelling with people of my age here in Italy, nobody knows what storytelling is. And it's great to hear that in the UK, for example, there is a culture of storytelling that here in Italy doesn't exist. Also, we don't have festivals, we don't have storytellers. And whenever I say that I'm a storyteller, people think that I read books out loud.
Yeah.
There's not a concept of storytelling at all. And I was wondering, how is it to be a young storyteller talking with other people of your age about storytelling in your context? Do people of our age know what storytelling is? Because whenever I talk to people of my age in the UK, everything they know about storytelling is maybe they have memories of being at school and having a local storyteller come and tell stories, which I don't have here, so it's better than nothing.
What a good memory. I'm glad they've been able to share that. I've not done the UK a disservice by painting it as such a loving storyteller hub, but I might have painted too rosy tinted a picture, I think, possibly, just because of my personal upbringing with it and my love for the art form. I can say, oh, and this is how I've grown up with it in my childhood. Definitely everything you're saying about other people my age and other adults, when they hear, oh, I'm a storyteller, I am constantly as well having that conversation on, no, I didn't write the stories myself. No, I am not reading from a book. No, it is not this and this is not that. I think that misconception applies everywhere. And although there are storytelling festivals and there were other kids for me to play with and talk to while I was at these festivals or growing up, but in the storytelling clubs in each city, there were never any other children. You know, like when I was going to these evening storytelling rounds, I was the youngest in the room. I have always been the youngest in the room in these clubs, which is why, with my dad especially, so it's a family affair having set up this storytelling club, Sting in the Tail. And when you asked earlier if my parents were or weren't storytellers, sorry, Despina, just to circle to that for a moment. My dad and I have like a two-hander storytelling set that we take, and we've toured a little bit at different storytelling clubs. And he always tells a story or tells a story on his own at the end for Stories from the Floor. My mum does occasionally, but my dad does and likes to do quite a lot. And we have a two-hander set. So they're all storytellers. I meant to mention that earlier and I didn't manage. But in these storytelling clubs, therefore, I'm always the youngest in the room. And so setting up a storytelling club was to try and get younger people, especially now that I am a decade and a half older than when I was going to clubs myself, to try and make sure that there is a young generation. But always there are adults in storytelling areas going, oh, it's so lovely to see young faces, because it is they don't say dying art form, but there is always this idea that people are aging. The storytelling population is an old one and it is aging. There are young storytellers. I know them. We're all very passionate. I'm part of so many different things to try and keep storytelling going. But within us, there is the age group that knows storytelling. But across the UK, we're very niche. So like any niche hobby or like any niche job, other people go, oh, I didn't know that was a thing you could do. They'll go, oh, I didn't know that existed. And that's definitely as true in the UK as in other countries. I think actually, so the last thing on this, when you're asking, within the UK, the English storytellers, you know, I am English on this. I like to say I'm British, but for this idea, the English storytellers are quite jealous of the Welsh. We're quite jealous of the Scottish and the Irish.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because these culture groups, partly because whether do you blame English or colonialism and all of this, the English have tried to wipe out culture in these areas for the Welsh and the Scottish and the Irish. And they had had a very strong oral storytelling tradition, as I am sure the English have had, but then ours sort of got much more squashed than the others. And then we tried to squash everyone else's out. And in rebellion, and quite rightly so, in order to hold on to your heritage and your culture when you're being squashed out, they kept their storytelling a bit more. And now I'd say Britain as a whole does still have a storytelling tradition. And it has these festivals, and it has these tradition bearers, and it has people that grew up with storytelling, but only in defiance of the English. And now the English get to benefit from it.
Well, okay. Not
No,
whitewashing
okay,
anything. It's what every empire did. It was not only the English, yeah? So this was a widespread tactic around the world back then. We should
Yes.
mention here.
So glad for everyone in defence who held on to their stories.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And no matter how dark the past might have been during the colonial era, nowadays the English as well are trying to maintain those traditions. They're encouraging it. Yeah, we should mention that as well. So
not to
making amends.
Yeah, not to try and paint with one brush the whole past or the whole current. But when you said, I suddenly thought, oh, there was quite a lot when I was growing up to encourage Welsh children in the storytelling. And because I was attending, for instance, Beyond the Border, which was held in Wales, there were people going, oh, you're a young storyteller, you should get into this network. And I went, oh, I can't, because I'm all the way out in Manchester. I'm not part of that. Those people, and obviously I did actually benefit because people liked me and they talked to me and this, but there were people trying very hard in certain bubbles and locations, because that's as far as you can manage to encourage the children in your area. And so I'm trying to become a bubble to encourage some people in Manchester now that I'm old enough. And also you said, Simona, about people remembering having storytellers in schools. Brilliant, so useful, so beneficial for kids. And again, not to go into politics, but now with different budget cuts or different ways the government say to focus, that is not what the current kids are growing up with. If you ask in 10 years, if someone asks the current children, oh, did you have this? Very few of them will share with you, oh, I had a storyteller coming in and this benefited me. There are still people telling stories in schools, absolutely. But I remember talking to quite a few storytellers who said, well, this was my bread and butter. This was how I made a living in the UK as a storyteller. It was by going into schools. And I know that that isn't the case so much now. And so when I was growing up as well, I was going, I'm going to be a storyteller. But how I'm going to pay for it, I don't know, because I know the school jobs aren't going to be there.
And do you think, Simona, it might be time for a little story now? Would you like, Iris?
Yes, of course. See, I wasn't sure what I would tell when I came on. And so with talking about all stories. Once there was a king, a just and wise king who was beloved by his people, although that may be difficult for some people to imagine. But it is true here. This king, he is just and wise and loved, and it is his birthday. And as he waits in his tower room at the top of the castle, and he stretches in the sunshine, he looks out of that window and the smile slips right off his face. Because it is his birthday. And he would like to go out into the sunshine, out into the forest, go and explore something new, see what the world has to offer. But he knows he is going to have to spend every minute of it sat on his throne, in the throne room, thanking people for their gifts. Because his constituents, his subjects, they have all been working for months on their gifts. They have been in their houses by the last candlelight, sewing beautiful embroidered hoops or whittling little wooden birds or painting him little paintings. sometimes even large ones. They've added them all together. There are giant quilts, there are tapestries, there are pieces of furniture. And he knows this, and he has them already. And this happened last year, and he is a king, and he can afford to buy anything, and he doesn't need these. But he appreciates the love and the devotion that they are showing, and he will spend his birthday saying, thank you. And so he wakes in his tower room, he looks out of the window, and there around the castle there is a queue, not once, not twice, but thrice around the castle walls. And he goes and he sits in the throne room, and he says, thank you. And the sun, it rises and it reaches its zenith, and slowly, slowly it creeps towards dusk, and all day he sits in that throne room and he says, thank you. And then the last person is leaving and the door shuts behind them. And he looks at this giant mound of glittering presents, all wrapped up in beautiful paper, tied with ribbons. He's tired. Maybe he'll go to bed. But there at the bottom of the pile, he suddenly sees a brown paper package tied up with string. And he pulls it out. He doesn't remember having been given this. It's so plain. And he pulls at the string and it opens. And there are 3 wooden dolls. Identical. Wooden dolls for a king? He is not a little girl. These are little wooden peg dolls. Is he supposed to play with them? I mean, but also they look so similar, and they've been beautifully handcrafted. It's true, but he's looking at them going, what am I supposed to do with this? When he realizes a note has fallen out to the floor, and he picks it up. My dear king, these 3 dolls are identical. I know that what you love more than anything is something new, something exciting, something you have to figure out. I have here for you, for your birthday, a riddle. Your gift is to discover what is the one difference between these 3 dolls. Happy birthday, a loyal subject. And the tiredness is swept completely out of the king's mind. He pushes things aside on the table, he lays the 3 dolls out, and he sends his servants running for measuring devices, for measuring tape, for tweezers, for magnifying glass, for weighing scales. And he sits. He is going to find out the difference. In the morning, he pulls his face sticky off the table, and there is the imprint of a doll in his cheek where he has fallen asleep on top of them. There was no difference, but it's no matter. He has more ideas. There is still more things to measure and quantify. And all day, he sits at that table and he tests the dolls. He leaves the running of the kingdom far behind him. But at the end of the day, still, there is no difference. He has measured their height, he's measured their width, he's measured their inseam and the crook of their legs and arms. He has looked through the magnifying glass and counted. Their hair has the exact same number of threads. Their clothes has the same number of stitches under the magnifying glass. He has weighed them, and they are the same weight to the nearest half a gram, for this is the best weighing scale in the kingdom. And so what else is there? They are the same weight, they are the same height, they look the same, they have the same mocking, painted smiles. And his servants, they say, please, your majesty, won't you go to bed? Maybe it will seem better in the morning. He falls into a fitful sleep. And the next morning, he sets to work again and again. And the servants become worried because their just and wise king is not ruling well. He's not ruling at all. He has left the running of the kingdom behind him, and he's starting to get these large bags under the eyes, and he's snapping. And it's not just because he's hungry, and it's because he's tired. And they say, your majesty, how about we send for people? We can send for the doctors and the magicians, for the wise women and the fools, and maybe they will have an idea. Let us send out a message. And that very morning, the king has woken from a bad dream with painted, mocking smiles dancing around inside his head. And yes, fine, please, invite them. After a few days, when he wakes up, He looks outside of that castle window, and again there is a queue not once, not twice, but thrice around the castle walls. And it is people here to help, people here to test the dolls. And he goes down to the throne room and he welcomes each one in. And he gives them some money for their trouble. He offers them lots of food, and everyone is grateful. Everyone comes in with big ideas, and not one of them can help. They all take his money, they eat his food, they wave sticks around, they douse, they wander, they wave their hands above the dolls and speak words, they muse ponderously for hours before admitting they're not sure, and they leave. This is it. He has no idea. This is his life now. It's the worst birthday gift ever. And he just, But in the middle of the night, he wakes suddenly in a cold sweat, but with a memory from when he was a little boy, going with his mother to visit a wise woman. Someone that he can't remember what it was his mother had needed to ask her, but she hadn't wanted to tell the king, and she hadn't wanted to tell anyone he knew. And she'd taken him, and they went to this wise woman who'd lived on the other side of the forest, up a mountain, in a cave. And she had known what to do. She had made his mother happy again. I mean, she was an old woman when he was a little boy. She's probably not even there. She didn't come to the summons. But what if? Just maybe. And so he gets out of bed. He saddles his horses himself. He wraps the 3 dolls up carefully. He takes some bread and honey and puts them in the other pannier. And then he rides. He rides out into the forest at night. The moonlight becomes hidden behind the branches. They're scratching at his face, but he rides to the base of the mountain. And then he climbs up until he finds that cave. And it's dark. And he feels his heart sink, because of course it is, but he goes into the cave anyway. But there is a turning at the end, and as he comes around the bend of that cave, there is firelight. And there is an old woman sat cross-legged by the fire, who looks up at him with not a hint of surprise in her eyes and says, "Welcome. It's lovely to see you again, my boy." And the king, it has been a while since anyone called him a boy. But he looks at this old woman. He said, "Grandmother, I have brought you food. I have brought you bread and honey and some wine. And I have a question. Can you help?" And her eyes are sunken far back in her head. Her skin walks like walnuts around her eyes, but she smiles at him. And her teeth are the teeth of a 20-year-old, white and glinting in the firelight. She says yes. She eats the bread and honey. He lays out the 3 dolls, and she looks. "Ah, I see." "You do? You see?" "Yes, please. Bend here close, have a look." And the king bends his head towards the dolls, and the old woman's hand snakes out, grabs a hair on his head, and plucks it. And then she picks up the first doll. And there is a hole, an infinitesimal tiny hole in the ear of that doll that the king has not noticed. And she begins to thread that hair into that hole. And it goes in, and it goes in, and then it is gone. She pushes it in with the base of her thumb like a letter into a postbox. It's gone. You see? I had no idea that was there. Grandmother, this is amazing, but I don't understand. I don't know. She says, "Please, look. And the king bends and looks, and ow! She plucks another hair, holds up the second doll, begins to thread, like into the eye of a needle, in and in. And the hair begins to come out and out of the other side, and then drops to the floor of the cave. Now you see. There is a difference. There is something different. Grandmother, I had no idea, but I do not know, I do not see. And she says, "Here, come, look." And he says, "No, I am not falling for that again." And he rears back, but she is quicker than him. Her hand snakes out, gets another hair. Ow! And now with the third hair, she picks up the third doll and begins to thread that hair in and in through the hole in the ear. And then it begins to come out. but not out of the other side, out of the mouth. There again, there is a tiny infinitesimal hole, and that hair begins to come out, and it is twisted. It is bent, it is curved, it begins to twist, and by the time it drops onto the floor of the cave, it is like a spring, tightly curled. Now you see. Grandmother, I must confess, I see, but I do not understand. Thank you, for you have shown there is a difference between these three dolls, but why? Why is there this difference? And she looks at the king. My liege, these are the people in your kingdom. These are the three types of people in the world. This first doll, I mean, it is a scholar. It is a studier, someone who always remembers what it is told, stores all this information up. Everything they hear, they keep. But this second one, in one ear and out the other. The third, why, the third is a storyteller, a bard. Everything they hear, they pass along. Everything they hear, they tell, and this is the way the knowledge moves and transforms. Because every storyteller adds their own twist to the tale.
Wonderful telling. And Iris, you did exactly what the story is about, because I love this story. I heard this story many times, but never as you told it and in the version that you told.
It's such a beautiful story for storytellers because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I have heard many different people tell this story, and every time they have all added their own twist.
Yeah.
Every time.
In the version I heard last, the king was much more spoiled than yours because, okay, everybody loves a good riddle, obviously, but immediately after having a quick look through the dolls, not even going thoroughly through them, he had his scholars and scribes and everybody on his entourage figure out what the problem was instead of using his own brain, you see.
There, see? Yes, for this, it was like, no, it was a good gift. It was just too much for him.
Yeah.
I remember telling this when I was quite little as well. And so the point is, well, what differences might there be? And sometimes even I have him take a paint sample from the painted faces and they send off the pigments to try and find out if they're from different, I figured out everything you could possibly do. And yet in all of that, he never notices a few holes in the head. So,
Yeah.
Iris, you told us that you're going to train with Shonali.
yes.
So what's the future looking like for you?
Oh, so Shona Lee runs Walking the Wild Woods every 2 years, I think. And last summer when I was at Fate, we talked and I went, okay, so that's what I'm doing this year. From November, that starts with a residential month. So that will be November to August. Along with that, obviously, I'm going to have to be telling stories and also probably writing stories. This is also what I do, and this is, I think, partly what leads to confusion in some of my peers about what storytelling is until they come to my club and find out, because I am at a creative writing degree. That's what I just finished. So people go, you have written a story, now you read your story. And I go, no, it's not that. So this year I'm going to have to try and find out how much of a freelance career and fee I can make out of writing stories and telling stories alongside studying. Yeah, this summer I'll be at Festival at the Edge. I've also started going to a few folk festivals because, again, this keeping folk arts alive in Britain, they've started reaching into keeping storytelling alive as well. There's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes of people to get storytelling actively involved in these festivals. So I'll be at Sidmouth Folk Festival and Whitby Folk Festival, and then I will be studying for a year, and it will transform my practice and my art, obviously, because getting to learn under Shonley is an incredible chance. And then by next summer, hopefully I'll be building up more of a repertoire and of festivals, and we will just see how it might grow from there. I've been growing it while I've been studying, and I have my own club, I have shows I can take and tour, I have a few summer work. So we're just hoping. We're hoping the climate towards storytelling, the funding for opportunities keeps expanding, that people keep hearing and making space for stories, and I will keep fighting to make space for stories.
So for people listening who might
Mm.
wonder or might not know, even though she's quite famous and very, very popular, we should tell that the person we're talking about, the one that's going to be Iris' mentor soon, is Shonali Cumbers, and she's a wonderful lady. She's a British and English lady of Jewish origin, and she focuses on telling tales that were taught by her granny to her and were handed down to her. So she keeps the tradition on. She's trying to maintain those stories from her Jewish ancestors alive, giving
She's
them,
the
of course, her own personality and her own take on them, which is really brilliant because sometimes you have in particular women being demonized in so old stories, which she tries to change.
the Walnut Girl, I think, was the last story I heard. And again, that one's an adventurous and something going. But yeah, Shonali, she's the last Drutsala, and her bubba Edith Marks that has handed these stories, and again, I think it's very interesting. That's what stories is. It's this midrash technique of walking the story.
Yeah.
Shonali knows 4,000 stories. And everyone who doesn't know goes, how on earth can you know 4,000 stories? And how often do you practice them? And how do you do this? And that's what's so interesting, this of how all the stories interlink to each other, and how she can remember them when her grandmother started telling her them when she's 4.
Well, it's when our human brain makes the most powerful connections back then. I'd say.
So anyone that doesn't know and is listening to this, do look up Shonali Cumbers. Yes, I should have.
Indeed, yeah. Her telling, because every time I have watched one of Shonali's performances, there are always so many threads. She can take it, and she says, but we won't go that way now because I can only tell this story today. You know, there are always different threads to follow, which reminds me strongly of Greek myths because they too are interwoven into each other.
Yeah, like this character is also in this story, and you've either met them or you've never met them before. And so they have to always stand on their own, but they also reference their role in other stories, and it's an entire landscape. And that is so difficult when people are used to telling a one-off story. But to say this story is an entire landscape, and if you wanted to know about any of these other characters, I have their backstories too, or I have their future stories too. To know all of this, it's incredible. But my dad still, when Shonali goes, oh, do you want this story? And sometimes if there's time, she gets the audience, you have to cheer, you have to say, yes, we want this story. My dad was in one of these shows and it was, do you want this story? And he said, yes, yes. And not enough other people did. And so he has never gotten that story. And so 15 years later, still, when he sees Shonali, he goes, I still want to know what happened to this one. But because she's never told him, he's still annoyed at that audience that didn't cheer for that story because now he doesn't know it.
You cannot stand being at the cliffhanger, can you?
But that's the thing, when every bit diverges, every cliffhanger she does take you down means that later on you will have run out of time. Every story you hear means you can't hear a different story. The choice, the wealth is, I mean, isn't that just life? Every one that you choose to hear means there is a later one you might not hear, but you've got this one.
So Sonali is a Drutsila, which means that she carries on her own tradition. And what about you, Iris? Usually this is a question that's put to our muses by Simone. I'm surprised she didn't ask you today. She must have been carried away by our chat. So you told us a folk tale. You said you sometimes tell Viking tales. What other tales do you like? Do you enjoy telling?
Oh, I've always enjoyed creation myths and these stories, like animal stories, because as I'm growing up, these are often the stories that are told in the kids' tent as well. I think, this is where fire is from. But these are also the oldest stories, the stories that explain how the world is around us, why the world is the way it is, and origins. As I've grown up more as a storyteller, I have a great love for hearing them, but there are complications again around colonialism or the taking of indigenous stories that makes me a little more wary around creation myth. But I always love hearing them. From creation myth, therefore, wisdom tales, those are everywhere, and stories about stories are storytellers' self-indulgent stories. I like that. I recently made my first storytelling CD because I'm a grown-up storyteller now and I can. So I made a storytelling CD, and for that I tried to put on stories that I've been telling for a while so that it doesn't hurt so much to sort of take them out of my repertoire or half out, because I've told them in a lot of places. Once the story's on a CD, that's not so much a story you then tell live because it's available elsewhere suddenly for re-listening. And that story CD had a thread of women violence, honestly. There were stories of women succeeding against men trying to hold them back, or things that have happened, There is a Selkie version. I've always told a Selkie story, and this, again, it's the stealing of a woman's skin and this, and then her choice and the kid. Yeah. So I don't know how that became a common thread. When I introduced my CD at my launch event, I was like, by the way, I've had a very happy life. My boyfriend is lovely. My dad is lovely. But these stories, they're so plentiful over human history because, again, these are things to listen and to train, to teach women about, to be wary of, or to learn. And as well, storytelling maybe has often been a prerogative of women over these years. So there are so many stories like this. I've done quite a few of those. And I think now I'm not sure what stories I will tell. I'm looking forward to making a sort of a new repertoire. Now I've come through being a student as well. I've mostly been I've been listening to large stories at my storytelling club, big hour-and-a-half epics and things made, and not individual stories. And I've been studying and I've been working and I've been this. So I've only been acquiring a few more stories. I'm looking forward to making a whole new repertoire going forward now with this story CD. Probably creation and wonder and animals, why the world is the way it is, how people are within it.
I was wondering because your surname has so that remind me of Vikings. So
Ooh.
I was wondering, Skipworth, skip like a ship.
As far as I'm aware, my surname is Old English. I found it in the Doomsday Book. The skip is actually from Skipworth. It's a sheepfold, as far as I'm aware. It's the name for the pen of sheep. I've done an ancestry test and all stuff. I am very, very Northwest English. This is definitely where my family is from.
Yeah, but with a very Greek name, whose myth you can always rely upon.
That was a very good choice by my mother. When, I get to meet people and go, oh, I'm Iris. And it's, yeah, oh, what a lovely name, or this. And I always, I got it for my birthday. This was the first gift my mother gave me. It's a lovely gift. It's always been the right name. And there were never any other irises, but the name is catching on again now. Its generation has come around. Now there are actual chances when someone yells Iris near a play park that they're not calling for me. They're calling for a 5-year-old.
So would you like to share a little story with us to end this interview with, my love?
Yes, okay, but a little one. Okay then. Whenever I go for a short story, it is often a Nasreddin. Nasreddin stinks. He has not had a bath for over a week, maybe a month. He's not sure. He lost count. Washing was so unimportant compared to everything else that was going on at this point. And also, he hasn't bought new clothes for a while, and his slippers are starting to wear a hole under the ball of his foot, and on his heel, he can feel the road as he walks. And he's started to notice a hole in his pants and his top now as he walks, and he suddenly realized that people are crossing the road ahead of him as he's walking down the street. And he realizes the reason really might be him. And so he heads towards the bathhouse. He sees the bathhouse there on the street, and he walks up towards the door, and the attendants, waiting to welcome in the guests and take the money, bring the towels, see him coming and grimace. Ugh. And so when he comes closer and he begins to take off his shoes. They go and get a threadbare towel, and they hold it out to him at arm's length, and they say, "Through that way, sir." And Nasruddin goes, he gets changed, he takes a towel, he goes for the bath. None of them come to rub oils into his skin. None of them come to help scrape off the dead skin cells. He is left completely by himself. But he tends to himself as best he can, and then he wraps this threadbare towel around and cleans himself off. When he gets back out and goes to get changed, there his clothes still are left exactly where he put them. They've not been washed or laundered or dried. His shoes are still by the door, pushed far, far away from the entrance so that other people don't see them on the way in. But he gets dressed and he goes back to the entranceway, and there are the two attendants. He slips on his shoes and he holds out to them a coin for their service. Hold out their hand, looking scornfully at this man, though he is now cleaner and doesn't smell, but still, in these clothes, they hold out their hand, and he drops into each of their palms a gold coin. They look at each other in astonishment, but Nasruddin, he's already turned and left and walked out of the bathhouse. What a foolish old man! Who knew he was so rich, this beggar in rags? A whole gold coin when we did nothing. We must keep an eye out for him. Keep an eye out for him if you ever see him coming down the street again. The next week, Nasruddin is coming down the street, and the attendants at the door, well, they spot him. They call out to him. They say, "Sir, sir, isn't it time for a bath? Would you like a bath in here today?" And Nasruddin, he smiles to be welcomed. He says, "Yes, actually, I would like that." He takes his shoes off at the entranceway and steps inside. And they say, this way, please, sir." They bring out large, fluffy white towels. He takes off his clothes and folds them and follow him to the bathhouse. They bring over oils. They scrape at his skin. They give him a massage. They look after his hair. And once he is anointed and clean, he comes back to the changing room, and his clothes have been washed, have been dried or folded there. He puts them on clean against his clean skin. And then he goes to put his shoes on as well. And they say, "No, sir, you can't put on these shoes again. You can almost touch the road through your shoes. We have other slippers that have been left here before. Here, maybe you would like these to swap. We will get rid of it." "Thank you very much." And Nasruddin, he puts on these slippers, and fresh, he turns to go into the outside world, and the attendants are waiting, their hand outstretched, and he goes, yes. He reaches into his pocket for a tip, and he places into each of their palms a small bronze coin. "Sir, this is not..." "What is the problem?" "But, sir, last week you gave us a gold coin each, and we barely did..." "You cannot seriously be giving us a small bronze coin after everything we have done today, after how we have waited on you." Nasruddin, he looks at the two attendants and he smiles, but "My boys, these coins are for last week's service. Last week I gave you the gold for today."
Yay! Way to go, Nasruddin.
Love this story. And I love Nasruddin stories, so always good to hear
Absolutely.
one.
Always a lesson to be taught.
Yes, yes. Yes, that's the stories I've ended up telling today, isn't it?
You make our listeners just a tiny little bit wiser, I think, Iris, today
Mm.
with your
I
stories.
do love hearing a Nasruddin. When we were saying about storytelling festivals, there's a few new ones now in the UK. Beyond the Border is sadly closed down. Fate is getting a little smaller, but hopefully we're revitalising it. But there's East Anglian and there's Oxford, and I went to Stealing Thunder Festival last summer in the Lake District. And what we did, it was a sort of scheduled, unscheduled session in the lunch tent on one afternoon, but it was an hour of Nasruddin. It was 60 minutes. There was a scribe there with a big sheet of paper, and absolutely everybody was invited to tell. and to tell as much as they could, maybe. My mum told a story in this one, for instance, when I say that we are all storytellers. And so it was how many you could tell. I think in the end we got to 67 or so, because of course, it being unscripted, not everyone was telling only their shortest Nasruddin. So some people were telling several minute longs. But what a fun afternoon. All the, you sit there and within 5 minutes you could have one story or 5 stories. And each one has a punchline or a moral or a something. And this whole tent is laughing. And there is someone writing down Nasruddin bathhouse, Nasruddin smoke, Nasruddin this, just as a record. I do love a good Nasruddin's tale. I heard several there that I've then tried to tell later. If I'd only had a few minutes, Nasruddin and the tax collector.
I call them shots of stories in between drinks.
Ah, yes, like little synopsis, little joke. I mean, the little shaggy dog stories. They just go, oh, and have you heard the one of?
Yeah.
Aris, it's been great to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time and for the lovely stories and the lovely chat.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had a really nice time. I mean, yes, which storytellers don't love talking about themselves and about stories, right? You're giving us all such a chance to indulge. We get to talk about our favorite topics and we get to talk to each other.
That's true. And we enjoy it as much as our muses and hopefully as much as our listeners, because this is exactly what this is. This is our effort of bringing our worldwide community together, just making connections and having one storyteller know another, meet another.
Absolutely. Now I know Simona. I never knew.
There you go. Well, Irish, good luck with furthering your storytelling trajectory.
Yeah.
I hope things go smoothly. There will always be a story about it.
Absolutely. And I hope I will see you in October at Get a Word in Edgeways.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
We will all meet up in Much Wenlock.
Yeah, which Simona has yet to come to, hopefully one day. Yeah. I mean, she's heard so much about it.
It's just a gorgeous place as well. Yeah.
Enjoy your day, and thank you very much for doing this.
I really enjoyed it. Have a lovely day.
You too. Bye, ladies.
Bye.